Do you love to play Magic Online but have a tight budget? Check out Mtgo Academy's Academy Budget Bot in the Magic Online Classifieds. All cards in stock are cheaper than one event ticket.
Okay, here we are. This is round 4 of the Classic Daily event. We are 2-1, having just lost our last match against Scorpio. If anybody skipped through the previous matches, I am recording the sound after the fact. The video was recorded live at the time, but I was feeling under the weather and didn't feel like I could concentrate too much on putting forth good commentary since I wasn't feeling too well. So I'm going to try and do my best and remember how things played out to the best of my memory. So we're playing Bara, who is someone I've never seen before. I later found out that I guess he's a grinder in other formats. I lose the die roll, which is pretty much what decided this match. He plays turn 1 Petal and Library of Alexandria to play a Oath of Druids, and I've got almost nothing to answer a turn 1 on the draw Oath of Druids. And there isn't anything in my hand that really solves anything. I've got a pair of Tangle Wires which could potentially buy some time, but the only way I can win with this deck is to attack, and that means I have to put creatures on the battlefield, which means it activates his Oath of Druids, and I'm not in a position to try and race a Grizzlebrand or worse, a Emrakul or something like that. So I'm pretty much at a loss. I think I'm just pretty much playing out the string at this point. I think I'd convinced myself that I had already lost this game. But I think really the only way I could win actually is if I draw my 1 duplicate and he doesn't have the good game version and he plays Emrakul and I can get a 15-15. But other than that, I really didn't think I had much of a chance. So I'm pretty much just playing out the string, trying to slow the game down. I save my Tangle Wires so that if he does play something, I'll be okay. But that was probably the wrong thing to do because he just turns around and Demonic Tutors for his Orchard. So I would have been able to stop that if I played Tangle Wire last turn. So going to the sideboard, it's pretty easy changes. I bring in 4 cages, 2 orbs, Witchbane orbs, and I bring in a duplicate. I take out the Null Rods, even though they are pretty good against some of the cards in their deck. They're not the cards that I'm really worried about. The other cards I take out, I think I take out Revokers. Crucible of Worlds isn't really a big deal. Okay, so I leave in the Revokers and I take out the Wormcoil Engines. I guess. Oh, I know. I wanted to keep the Revokers in case of Time Vault. That was my concern. If I play a Witchbane Orb and he can't Oath, then I wanted to have the Revoker for Time Vault. Because you could then take all the turns and just hard cast Emrakul at some point. So that was my thought process there. And I brought in the Ratchet Bomb again, kind of as a catch-all. It's the one card that I could play that's not a creature that can deal with Oath itself. So that's why I brought in the Ratchet Bomb. So we'll see what happens in game 2 here. Alright, so my opening hand is pretty good. I got a double Witchbane Orb and a Lodestone Golem and a Metamorph. I got plenty of lands to cast all those things, so I feel pretty confident about this hand. The only thing I probably would have preferred was to have one Sphere of Resistance that I could play on turn 1. That would have been the only card that I would have preferred to see to make this hand absolutely perfect. So I just play Ancient Tomb and pass, and I think that was probably the best thing Pop Bara could have seen. So he plays a Voltaic Key, which really doesn't do anything yet, at least. But it affirms my concern about the Time Vault being an issue. So I play a Workshop, try and play a Witchbane Orb. That gets met by a Force of Will, which is okay by me. At the time I figured, it's not a big deal, I got another Witchbane Orb. So we'll see what he plays on his turn 2. Again, wastelanding my Workshop, not too bad. He didn't play a land, so I'm feeling pretty confident about things. He's got no mana. I unfortunately can't Sphere and Witchbane Orb, but it doesn't really matter. So I stick the Witchbane Orb, and I feel like I'm in a pretty good position at this point. So he drew a Forbidden Orchard and plays that. I draw a Revoker, which is pretty timely at this point. My concern really now is just Time Vault. So I decided to play the Revoker instead of the Lodestone Golem. Again, because to me the Time Vault is the real problem. I'm concerned if I play the Lodestone Golem. Oh, actually, no, I had an extra mana. Never mind. I could float a mana, so I play Golem and Revoker. So he brainstorms. And again, I think he's just fishing for some answers, because at this point the Lodestone Golem going to prevent him from being able to play Brainstorm on his turn if he doesn't draw land. So I think he's pretty much just digging for land at this point. Doubt he was trying to dig for an answer to the Golem itself. So he did find a land, and a decent one at that, so he could shuffle away whatever card is on the top of his library if he didn't want it. But I think there's a long pause here. I think it takes a few minutes to figure out what his play is going to be. Alright, so after going into the tank for about 5 minutes, Bara decides to just play a Mana Crypt and pass the turn. So at this point, I'm feeling pretty good about my chances here. I've got a Metamorph that I can cast to copy my Lodestone Golem. And after going into the tank yet again, we finally get some action here from Bara. Cracks this Flooded Strand. And plays Nature's Claim on my my Phyrex and Metamorph. Which was a really interesting thing. It prevents me from blowing up his Voltaic Key Time Volt combo if he wants to assemble it. But he then Vampiric Tutors. So the interesting thing is I could have led this Sphere of Resistance first. But it still wouldn't have changed his line of play. I still think he would have done all of that with the sphere on the stack, and that he wouldn't have really been affected by me then deciding to play a Metamorph on Lodestone Golem. So I really don't think I had a decent out there. Unfortunately, he had the perfect line of cards, the Nature's Claim and the Vampiric Tutor, and I didn't have Chalice of the Void out to really prevent anything. So without much that I can really do, I try and keep his mana at bay. So he got the Time Vault, I imagine, but he just didn't have the mana to cast it. So I ended up winning. So going into game 3, being on the draw, there probably isn't really any difference in terms of what I really want to do. Being concerned about Lotus Petal, I decided to bring in Null Rod, which is actually in a way a slightly better version of Revoker, simply because it turns off all of his artifacts and doesn't turn on his Oath of Druids. It's probably a move that I should have done the previous turn if I considered the thought process that I actually ended up going through at the time. That I really, wanted to stop Time Vault. So my opening hand, unfortunately, that Null Rod plan decides to backfire on me. It's really a terrible hand. Null Rods 2 and 3 are basically useless, so I throw that away, and my next 6 cards are all non-lands. So my next 5 is actually pretty decent. I've got Grafdigger's Cage, so I feel like that's probably the best hand I'll get at that point, so I keep it. And unfortunately, Barbara has turn 1 with the Druids again. So at this point, my goal is to play Grafdigger's Cage and keep it on the battlefield. So right now I'm just thinking about what land I want to play and subject it to getting blown up by Strip Mine. Obviously, I'm not going to play the City of Traders, so it's a decision between the Factory and the Wasteland. But either way, I'm playing the Grafdigger's Cage because that's my only out at this point. So I ended up deciding to play the Wasteland, figuring that I'd prefer to have the Mishra's Factory just on the off chance that I need to go with the beatdown plan, Manland beatdown plan. So I play Grafdigger's Cage, but it's not meant to be. He's got a Force of Will and a blue card to cast it, which with 2 cards in his hand is 4 cards in his hand at the time was pretty small chance. So he plays a Wasteland, gets rid of my Wasteland, and I draw into Mishra's Workshop. I mean, at this point, you know, I'm so far behind that it really doesn't make much of a difference. He draws another Wasteland, and pretty much just waits for him to finally draw a Forbidden Orchard to win the game. He's got a Strip Mine to blow up any land I choose to play right now. So I think I end up playing the City of Traders, hoping that he ends up blowing the thing up. I end up Chalice for zeroing so that he can't play I'm not really sure why I did that. I should have went Chalice for 1, but I don't think it actually mattered at all. So right now I'm kind of daring him to blow up my City of Traders with a Strip Mine. In fact, that's kind of what I'm hoping he does. I'm really daring him to do it. I'd prefer him to get rid of it. Obviously, my Mishra's Workshop is more important to me, but he doesn't bite, and that's kind of the problem. I draw a Null Rod, which isn't really going to be a big difference at this point, but I do play it. I sandbag the Mishra's Workshop just to keep that. I don't want to subject it to a Strip Mine. I mean, I could play Trinisphere, but he's really in no position to really pressure me. So at this point, I draw a Tangle Wire, and the Tangle Wire is going to buy me some turns, but it's not going to be an answer. In order to play it, I have to play my Mishra's Workshop, which means I subject that to being Strip Mined, and at the same time I have to ditch my City of Traders, and so I end up deciding not to do anything, because that's such a bad line of play just to get a Tangle Wire out there. So I pass the turn, he doesn't do anything again, and then I draw a Wasteland on my next turn. The Wasteland changes my game plan slightly, because it allows me the ability to play the Tangle Wire without subjecting my Mishra's Workshop to his Strip Mine, and puts enough pressure on his Strip Mine that he has to consider wastelanding my or Strip Mining my Wasteland. Otherwise, he has to tap it. So he ended up choosing to tap it, which is kind of interesting. He gave me the option of whether or not I wanted to wasteland his land. And as soon as I drew the second Workshop, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Just eliminate the Strip Mine from being a problem. So the workshop allows me to play the Trinisphere. I also now have ability to cast my Metamorph, so I can Tangle Wire again and buy myself some more turns. So Bara then still again doesn't have a land drop. So I just tap some of my meaningless artifacts. Sphere Resistance really doesn't do anything, but I can play it and the Metamorph at the same time. That's what I did. Because he didn't have any permanents to play, I decided to wait a turn on the Tangle Wire. I should say. So I draw another Null Rod, which is pretty meaningless. The first one really wasn't doing anything. The second one definitely doesn't do anything. So I'm pretty much stuck with just being content buying some more turns with my Tangle Wire. So he again doesn't draw land, has to discard, which is ironic. He discards the Dragon Breath, which is obviously a much better card in his graveyard. It makes me wonder if he was actually purposely not playing anything so that he could eventually discard the Dragon Breath. It's an interesting line of play that I have to imagine that's what he did. So draw another pretty much useless card. Sphere Resistance doesn't really do a whole lot. Makes it difficult for him to cast Jace, but he's not casting Jace anytime soon anyway. So I just end up playing it and passing the turn. But clearly he didn't discard his Dragon Breath on purpose. He really is just not drawing any lands because he's... So I'm running out of time with my Tangle Wire. I draw Mistress Factory, which doesn't help because I can't activate it. So I keep the Null Rod in my hand. There's no sense in playing it. He still has to tap his land. And I go down to one counter on my Tangle Wire. And I draw the third Null Rod. I guess I was destined to have to play 3 Null Rods, since that was what was my opening hand was. So really didn't have anything to do. Decided to play the Null Rod. He again doesn't play any land. He interestingly discarded his Lotus Petal last turn, but it looks like I am actually preventing him from playing things. And so I draw a Lodestone Golem, which is a great card, except it turns on his Oath of Druids. So I'm unfortunately stuck. My Tangle Wire is going to bite the dust, and he finally gets a land drop. So my Tangle Wire bites the dust, and I draw my Phyrexian Metamorph one turn too late. So I try to get cute here, which was, in hindsight, just a terrible mistake. So what I was trying to do here was copy with my Metamorph a animated Mistress Factory, which would allow me to get a land that didn't tap for only artifact mana, so that I could then start beating down with Mishra's Factory. My Null Rod turns off the ability for me to tap the Mishra's Factory. So I couldn't do anything. I couldn't even animate it. I couldn't tap it for mana. It was quite literally a just dead card. So in hindsight, it was just a terrible move. I guess looking back on it, I wasn't drawing anything that was going to help me at all. So I just play another Sphere of Resistance, hoping to keep him from being able to play anything. But it really isn't hurting him too much at all. Between the Trinisphere and the Sphere of Resistances, they kind of nullify anything that costs less than 3 mana, and anything that costs more than 3 mana he probably wasn't going to play anyway. Or he's not close to playing, let's put it that way. So he cracks his 2 fetches. Oh, actually, going back to Lotus Petal, he couldn't play it because of my Chalice on 0. Which, ironically, at the time I figured Chalice at 1 was more important, but turns out that wasn't the case. So he taps out for a Nature's Claim, I think. Oh, sorry, a Brainstorm, excuse me. So clearly at this point he's just trying to find an orchard. I mean, this is pretty interesting game, how this is played out. I mean, I'm not drawing any of my 8 cards. He's not drawing any cards he can turn on with the Druid. So this goes back and forth for several turns, and actually this is when I realized I can't do anything to Mishra's Factory. So it's an unfortunate turn of events for me here coming up. So it looks like his Brainstorm found an orchard, and unless I draw a card now, I'm pretty much screwed. Grafdigger's Cage, I'm pretty sure gets countered. He's got a full grip of cards. I mean, there's no way he doesn't have multiple Force of Wills. So that pretty much ends the game. Oh, I see. He declined to counter it because he had a Nature's Claim. So going back to the Chalice of the Void on 1, I don't think it really would have mattered. I just played out the string. I just was curious what type of fatties he was using. But he was using the Blight Steel and Emerald package. So that's that. Unfortunately, after starting out 2-0, we didn't get there. But I hope you enjoyed watching these matches, and next time I will probably bring out a different deck, but we'll see what happens. So thanks for watching,